here to celebrate the wonderful work of 3 particular cities who have been shortlisted for the Impact Award. And they will be talking about impact, and they'll be sharing what they're doing for this in this sphere. So let's dive in. I think I've done this. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the highlights of our impact journey this year. We're going to then have presentations from our 3 superstars. So Ulrika from Gothenburg is here. Jakob from Copenhagen is here, and Milo from Flanders is going to make an appearance. He's got a meeting. He's going to be joining us. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening in our near future. Our goal is always the same at GDS and Meet for Impact. We are collaborating across the world to enhance, maximize the impact of business events and tourism, and to equip destinations, organizations, associations, PCOs into scaling that impact, so that we are fulfilling our potential as drivers of societal progress. So without further delay, let us get into the bulk of things. Some housekeeping. It's recorded. You can select the speaker view. I'm just reading this line. This is Julia. Select speaker view in Zoom if you want to not have a tile, but just have the speaker. You can put in questions or comments in the chat box anywhere. You can start now saying hi to your colleagues. Julia will moderate. Raise your hand or tell Julia you want to speak. And if no one's hearing you, just interrupt me, because I might not see you on the right-hand side if I've got speaker view activated. And you can use the reactions. You can celebrate, you can thumbs up, you can thumbs down, you can ask questions, you can use the little emojis to interact with us as well. Welcome, Alejandra. We have one more GDS person I see that have joined us. So some of you were with us at the inaugural Impact Day in Bruges. We can't not speak about this because it was an absolute highlight of our year. I remember Guy and I were sharing a cup of tea in Barcelona almost a year ago after IBTM on his kitchen table, brainstorming about what we could be doing to bring the community together. And then we came up with the idea of doing an Impact Day, something that would follow the GDS Forum from year to year as an additional event and topic. But we wanted to move away from the regular conversations on impact, which at the end of the day, a lot of it is very marketing centered still to this day in a number of conversations. And we wanted to initiate a movement where we are connecting back with the impact ecosystem. So the rest of the world has been working on this for quite a while. There's ecosystems that are focused on working on impact. There are funding ecosystems around impact. There are nonprofits and for-profit ecosystems around B Corp movement, for example, that are all about creating impact. So we wanted to kind of take that posture and come out into the world to say we consider ourselves as impact creators, and we would like to have that conversation with the rest of the ecosystems that are in that space. And that was the whole purpose of the Impact Day. In parallel, Visit Flanders, we're also preparing something to launch their methodology. So it was natural for us to come together and co-create this Impact Day. How many attended? Hands up with your, either with your hand or your little emoji. So we got about a half dozen people here who attended. Let me tell you, the others, you missed out. You really seriously missed out. And hopefully you're going to be with us next year when we do the second edition. So a number of things happened in the morning. Visit Flanders presented their methodology. They brought speakers to the table that were not from the industry, which was fantastic. We had conversations with people from, the funding ecosystem impact and seed capital. We had people coming from, we had someone who was a university professor. We had a few case studies. And then in the afternoon, we tackled a very difficult question, which is, what are we doing to scale this impact, and how will we be funding and resourcing this? So that was the beginning of our week in Bruges this year. That happened on the 14th of October, I believe. It was then it moved on to the GDS Forum, and particularly the GDS Award, which I think a lot more people actually attended on this call. And the GDS Awards are always the highlight of our year. For the second year in a row, it's been in conjunction with City DNA and GDS Forum. And this year we were celebrating 4 GDS Awards. So the Leadership Award, and the Most Improved Destination Awards, who are awards from the index results. And we were also celebrating the Innovation Award, which has been there for quite a few years. And we've got a couple of winners here from the Innovation Award, Gothenburg and from the Leadership Award, and we've got Jack from the Innovation Award. We've got a few of you that have won these awards. And we have the brand new Impact Award, which was only launched last year. So it's the 4th award for the GDS Awards. And the Impact Award is not curated from the GDS results. It is curated from programs, projects that are being put forward by destinations that have developed an impact program. So our 3 finalists this year were Copenhagen, Flanders, and Gothenburg. We had a beautiful gala, very, very well executed from the GDS team. And we gave the award this year to Copenhagen. So just a recap on the Impact Award and what it is. I think it's important to understand what it is and what it's not, because we did get quite a few submissions that demonstrated some fantastic initiatives around impact that were not eligible for the award. So we're going to bring back some key criteria for this award just to make sure that we are getting maximum submissions in the future that are really to point. So the first thing is, it celebrates GDS Index members that have been members at least for the last year, who have committed to legacy and impact in their business events through a structured program. That is critical to understand, because we have had impact programs presented to the award that were mostly tourism focused or kind of festival cultural events. Absolutely brilliant initiatives. They just weren't eligible for the actual award. So it's important to understand that it's really business events, impact programs, and again, sole case studies, if they are not supported by a structured program, again, are also not eligible, even though the case studies, for example, could submit to be submitted for the Incredible Impacts Award by ICA and Best Cities, which actually rewards impact projects and kind of association event case studies. This particular award rewards destination-wide structured programs. So I've come through this kind of the criteria where the Impact Award is awarded, and there's a whole, there's a grid in the back end. There's a process to this judging. It has to be unique, and it has to be bespoke, designed by the destination, not kind of assuming, a program that's been designed elsewhere. It has to have clear objectives that are in line with the destination's business event strategy, and showing how it's delivering on the city and the local government or the regional government's priorities. There has to be a structured stakeholder engagement process that goes beyond the business events ecosystem. The program has to demonstrate that it has committed resources, human, financial, technical, and it has a plan to support clients in delivering this. So it's not a one-off, it's a process that can be replicated and scaled. And finally, it includes measurement and reporting. So those are the main criteria by which the program is judged. We want to recognize that we had our first winner. They are not here because it's the middle of the night for them, but Business Events Sydney was the winner last year. Business Events Sydney has been a long-standing player in this space. They have been the destination that has the most, done the most research for the longest time. So we want to celebrate them and say, you know, well done, Sydney. They were not eligible again this year. The Impact Award is a one-of, because we want to push people up. As my friends James Latham would say, a rising tide lifts all boats. So we want to encourage a maximum number of destinations to keep enhancing their impact programs and apply. So as we move into our first finalists, I want to recognize our wonderful external judges. So in full transparency, this program is run by GDS Index and or GDS-Movement and Meet for Impact. But we are relying on external panels of judges to judge. We're a bit too close. Most of you are very close partners. So we want to make sure that we've got an independent panel of judges looking at the programs themselves. So we see the submissions when they come in. And what we do is determine eligibility. So do they respond to the criteria? And when they do, they are then passed on to the judging panel. And we don't see the judging process. We only see the end result. So Ben, Johannes, Jane, and Vicky this year were our wonderful panel of judges, and they did a fantastic job. Those of you that have been on judging panels understand that it's actually quite a responsibility to be judging. There's a lot of care and passion that goes in this. So I think we're ready to look at our finalists. So Gothenburg, Flanders, and Copenhagen, all three absolutely brilliant programs. And we're going to start with Gothenburg. Gothenburg, we've got Ulrika with us. Ulrika has been a very strong advocate and architect of the program called Gothenburg Way to Legacy. It's a three-pronged program, so it's got a program that supports the client in a structured manner. It has toolbox and also a community engagement side to the program. There's a systematic approach where the destination works with the client as well as its own ecosystem, making sure that there's an alignment between the mission of the event and the city's priorities, and then it accompanies the client through a process that goes from planning all the way to communication. And it was launched recently officially, but it's been used with a number of events with the International Ice Hockey Federation World Junior Championship in Gothenburg. And I will invite Ulrika to share her screen and talk to us about it.
Thank you very much. I'll just a little bit slow, but
good.
You see it now?
Perfect.
Excellent. Well, thanks for this opportunity, and Genevieve, you really know program inside and out. I could hear that. We're very happy to be shortlisted alongside Copenhagen and Visit Flanders, obviously, and congratulations, Copenhagen. It was truly well deserved, and you are an inspiration to us all. So my name is Ulrika Scoliege, and I work for the Gothenburg Convention Bureau, and I'm also part of the DMO-wide impact team. So impact for Gothenburg is key to our sustainability efforts. And like Genevieve said, we have a long tradition of using business and public events as tools for sustainable development and positive change. But there was a need for a more systematic approach. So in 2021, we created Gothenburg Way Legacy, which I'll come back to in a minute. And we've always had a very strong sector-based approach to business events because we're not a capital city. We were always dependent on strong research and industry in our region to attract business events. And we work with strategic bids, and our impact efforts also align with these strong sectors and development areas. And our impact work is also tied to the City of Gothenburg's goals and ambitions in prioritized areas. Impact is now incorporated into the citywide destination development plan and its action plans for business and public events. And I would say that our success so far is entirely dependent on broad stakeholder collaboration and partnership. Internally, there is a dedicated DMO-wide impact strategy group, not terribly diverse, sorry about that, we all look the same. We're representatives from the CBB, the events department, the trade and industry group, the destination development department, and our head of sustainability is also part of this group. And the purpose of this group is to further integrate this way of working into the organization and to develop Gothenburg Way to legacy, learn from each other, and also work towards achieving the goals of the action plans. So Gothenburg Way to Legacy, it's a three-part framework, and it consists of a method, which is a systematic approach. It involves partnering with associations and organizers and local stakeholders, and it uses the theory of change and covers the time before, during, and after the event. It also has a toolbox which contains guides and concepts and cases to be inspired by. And they can be used for strategic work to create long-term impact, but also for tactical activities for shorter-term value creation. And it has community support, and that's a collection of non-profit organizations. And this is where you can find opportunities for fundraising and donations or volunteering. The three-part structure is meant to encourage and enable engagement regardless of aspirations and resources. So it means that it's inclusive and it aligns with our belief that it's better for many to contribute rather than a few doing a lot. We hope to push clients and local stakeholders in a positive direction, and we believe that if it's too complicated, it might be easier to do nothing, which is something that we want to avoid. I will give examples from two Gothenburg Way Legacy projects using the framework method, just briefly about something that's ongoing, which is in conjunction with the Electric Vehicle Symposium and Exhibition, EVS. It's the world's leading business event for vehicle electrification. And Gothenburg, which is a dynamic e-mobility cluster, won the bid to host EVS in 2025 with support from 80 plus companies and trade associations, universities, etc., authorities nationwide. And there is an ongoing Gothenburg Way to Legacy project involving the public sector, industry, and academia. And 2 workshops have been held this year, concluding that EVS should contribute to new innovation collaborations, talent attraction, job creation, local skills development, and also positioning the city and West Sweden as leaders in electromobility. And the next step for this project is to determine how to reach these goals and assign responsibilities. I will dive a little deeper into the Ice Hockey World Junior Championship, which took place in Gothenburg in January. As part of the sustainability work of hosting the championship, an impact project called Increased Inclusiveness and Health Through a Better Hockey Culture was carried out. In ice hockey, an exclusionary culture and high barriers prevent many girls and women from participating. Many teenagers, both boys and girls, either don't start or they quit due to outdated norms. And this lack of participation negatively impacts public health. So there was a vision of the Impact Project to increase an interest in ice hockey amongst children and youth to foster positive social effects, and a wish for strengthened involvement in hockey to engage more participants and sustain their engagement. And the focus then was on achieving a more equal and inclusive ice hockey culture, and better leadership conditions, and an improved infrastructure with more ice surfaces. And to achieve this, there would need to be an increased gender equity in the sport, better recruitment of leaders, especially women, and improved conditions for leaders to foster a positive ice hockey culture. The impact work was structured using a theory of change. It's a bit difficult to see on screens. I'll just give an example of the different initiatives that took place. As part of the Impact Project, the Puck of Emotion initiative was launched, and it aims to create a safe and inclusive ice hockey culture by encouraging players and leaders to express their emotions and care for each other. And the goal is to remove negative stereotypes and behaviors and replace them with an environment where all players can thrive. The Pack of Emotion initiative focuses primarily on adults because they're the ones who are responsible for creating safe spaces. Some of the activities that took place were basic values education for coaches and leaders to build a positive and supportive culture within their teams. There was a nationwide campaign featuring a film on the importance of emotional well-being in ice hockey. There was a seminar for ice hockey leaders, coaches, and parents, and that focused on enhancing team and club culture. And there were study assignments for local teams focusing on team culture. Some of the outputs of the Pack of Emotion initiative were 60 leaders trained in the basic values education, and that's ongoing. The campaign film that was called Ice Hockey Needs More Feelings was viewed over 500,000 times, and that has had widespread engagement, which is great. There were 62 participants in the team and club culture seminar, and they were very happy with it and inspired to do further work. And 812 players took place in did the team study assignments, again with lots of positive feedback. And it's early days still, but the initiative has sparked deeper conversations about values in sport, especially locally and nationally, or regionally, I should say, through these values education sessions for ice hockey leaders, and those will continue and be followed up. The Impact Project falls under 5 of the community capitals, and it aligns with 2 SDGs. Number 3.4, which is good health and well-being, preventive health measures, and 5.1, gender equality, eliminate all forms of discrimination everywhere. And it also aligns with the city's public health programme, the Plan for an Equitable City, the vision and mission of the Gothenburg and the National Ice Hockey Associations. So what are some of the things that we've learned then working with Impact and Legacy? Although we see requirements in RFPs, I think they're still mostly destination driven, and convincing associations to embark on an impact journey can be challenging, even if it aligns with their vision and goals. Success really does depend on a shared purpose, but clients may still not always be ready or have the resources for a full impact project. It's time consuming, and I think that's been our biggest challenge. And they also suggest don't overcomplicate things and try and do too much. Make it your own, make it suit your destination. Again, for us, it was very important to offer possibilities at different levels of engagement with Gothenburg Way Legacy. And working more systematically with impact has improved the understanding, I think, of the value and power of events to create positive change. For example, we were invited to speak at the joint board meeting of our municipal and regional councils not so long ago, and that helped our politicians better appreciate the importance of business events. We have case studies on our website if anyone is interested in knowing more. So that was me. Thank you very much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ulrika. A fantastic case study, really, of a destination that has slowly over time started, testing some things and then eventually gravitated to a structured program. Kudos for building in the theory of change. Actually, you're going to notice that all three of our finalists are using a model of theory of change. I keep saying, and when I started in 2019 talking about 2018 talking about the theory of change, there were very few of us talking about the theory of change back then, but it is the #1 impact framework used in the world, and the absolute soundest way of developing an impact framework. Love the usage of the 7 capitals also, which is something that we have in common. So fantastic. We have a question. Or no, we have Julia saying you can have questions. So we've got 4 or 5 minutes for questions. Dive right in, guys, if you have a question for Ulrika.
I do. Hello, Annie from Toronto. Ulrika, when you ran those sessions for the hockey tournament, was that all paid for by the organizers of the tournament, or was there some kind of co-pay with the DMO?
Yeah, so when it comes to, which is different from business events, but when it comes to public events, there is a joint funding model. So it was part of that. It was part of the sustainability work that's done with public events, and we do have demands on the organizing association that they need to do sustainability work, and we do that in conjunction, and then impact was part of that.
That's great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it means that when they're deciding to do an event in Gothenburg, that they understand this and that they're actually presumably choosing you because of that element in part. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie, for that question. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. We're good? Cool. I'm assuming that we're gonna have access to all of your slides, right? Jakob and Ulrika, that's gonna be good. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to then move on to our second finalist, who actually was also the winner of our contest this year. So Copenhagen, winner of the 2024 Impact Award for the program Copenhagen Legacy Lab. I think probably everyone has heard of the Copenhagen Legacy Lab by now. The longest program in the destinations. It's recognized for having an original framework, which again is built on the theory of change, has got a structured process. It also stands on a very strong body of research. Copenhagen and Denmark have also got one of the strongest funding pools from governments to support research and development of impact frameworks. And also it has an open source model which is available for cities to actually replicate. So Jakob, welcome. I will stop my screen and you can share yours.
Yes, thank you. So, hi everyone, I'm Jacob from Copenhagen. And just before we start, it's been a really long day and I'm not on top, but I will go through the presentation and it will be shared with you afterwards. And nice to meet you. And I'm really ashamed that I was not at the event with all of you guys a few weeks ago, but it was great that we won the award in the end. Please let me
It's great
know
to
if you
see
can...
you because we know Bettina really well and
Yes.
Ulrika, so it's fabulous to have a new face and a bit of diversity in this group as well.
Okay, but now I've shared my screen, so hopefully you can see my presentation now. Is that right?
Yeah, you can go in presentation mode. Yeah, perfect.
Yes, okay, so I'll quickly try to cover what is Copenhagen Legacy Lab, how it has evolved, what is our framework or our model, the impact that we have seen so far, and then I'll go through just one example, I think, and then a little bit about some of the challenges and the learnings that we have seen since we launched the Copenhagen Legacy Lab a few years ago now. So what is Copenhagen Legacy Lab? We're a free of charge initiative that is working with long-term impact from congresses and events hosted here in Copenhagen. The initiative was launched in 2019 by Copenhagen Convention Bureau, which is a part of wonderful Copenhagen. And on a day-to-day basis, we are 2 full-time employees. So I am the one. And I'm working 50% of my time on congresses, and the other part I work on congresses. And then there is Gerda Marie, and she will be part of the webinar tomorrow. And she is 100% dedicated to working with congresses in Copenhagen. And then it's really important for us to say that we are working closely with our 11 bid managers that are trying to attract congresses and events to Copenhagen. So even though we are only 2 full-time employees, we are working closely with our other colleagues in wonderful Copenhagen and the Convention Bureau. You mentioned the budget, and every year we have approximately 270 euros that's dedicated to Copenhagen Legacy Lab. And our mission is to contribute to achieving long-term impact from congresses and events, but also to support national priorities. And this is something that we do together with the international associations, the local hosts, and stakeholders across different sectors here in Copenhagen. And lastly, it's important to mention that we also want to inspire and drive a change in the meeting and events industry together with all of you guys, by sharing our cases, methodology, and tools. That's how I think that we help each other in the best way moving forward. And since I mentioned this alignment, I think it's really important to stress that we are really focusing on aligning our initiative with international, national, and local priorities. And just to highlight a few, on an international basis, I would highlight the UN SDGs. That's, of course, something that we are looking towards. I would highlight the GDS strategy, the Best Cities strategy on legacy and impact, and also the strategic pillars for ECAP. If we move to the national priorities, then we have some partners which are also located inside wonderful Copenhagen, like Meet Denmark, which is the national meetings and events development bureau here in Denmark. So we are closely aligned with their work. We are trying to be in line with Denmark's priorities in areas such as life science, green transition, and tech, because 50% of the congresses that we are trying to attract to Copenhagen, they are life science congresses. So it's really important that we are closely monitoring what is going on in the industry. So that's also why we have mentioned the national life science strategy of Denmark, which is something that we try to be aligned with. Locally, we are working closely with the municipality, so the city of Copenhagen, and what is their priorities. We also have this destination network that's called Meeting Place, where we are part of the strategy. And lastly, I will mention wonderful Copenhagen's tourism strategy, where Copenhagen Legacy Lab is a big part of the new strategy. So that's just really nice to see that there has been this development over the last few years. And as you can see on the timeline, the journey has been really long, but everything started back in 2017 with the first drawings regarding the Impact and Legacy Programme. And in parallel, we had this PhD study, which you also mentioned, Genevieve, and a few research projects together with Meet Denmark, which I also mentioned. And then in 2019, Copenhagen Legacy Lab was launched, and in the beginning, we decided that this should be an open source, so that we wanted to share the research and tools and the knowledge with the rest of the meetings industry. And 2020 was an important year because we also got funded by the Copenhagen municipality to run this project for the next 4 years. And another highlight that I would mention is that in 2023, we also started working with major events, so primarily sporting events here in Copenhagen. And in 2023, we also updated our model, which I will show you on the next slide, so that we today use the same model for congresses and events, even though there is a few differences when we're working with congresses and events. Yeah. So this is the model that I mentioned on the slide before, and just like Genevieve mentioned, but also you, Ulrika, it's built on theory of change and how they're working with impact measurements in the EU Commission. So this model, back in the days, it was a linear process, and what we have learned and experienced from working with legacy is that working with linear is not that often a linear process. It is something where you learn along the way, and that's also how it should be. So that's why we have decided to make this this loop to illustrate that that it's an iterative and dynamic process. And just to mention a few phases of the framework, that there's a research and qualification phase in the beginning, and then also the alignment phase, which is really important, so that we are not just trying to solve problems in isolations, but together with all the authorities that I mentioned on the other on the other slides, and also in line with our priorities here in Copenhagen and Denmark, and also in EU. And then, of course, an important part is the stakeholder involvement. And here we try to involve the stakeholders from different sectors. And that's also what we have learned, is that some of our best cases, we have involved some stakeholders that would not usually be part of a congress or a meeting. So that they're just happy to be invited to be part of a congress. And another phase is the evaluation design, and that's something that is really important to discuss and decide upon before you run the activity or the initiative. And then there is a measurement phase, which we will follow most cases over 1 or 2 years after they've been hosted here in Copenhagen. But until now, we've worked with 15 congresses, so it becomes a little difficult when you've worked with a lot of congresses to follow all of them, even though that we would like to. And then lastly, I'll just share that the model is centered around our strategy and our principles. Yeah. The impact that we have seen so far. So far, Copenhagen Legacy Lab has influenced the business model of the Convention Bureau, and today we also have other KPIs than just heads and beds. So that's really nice to see. Copenhagen Legacy Lab has also contributed to the amount of business that we have won to Copenhagen, and now we are part of more bids when we are bidding for congresses. Then Copenhagen Legacy Lab is more or less always mentioned, and sometimes we also have like quite a lot about what could we do in terms of impact and legacy in bit. So starting earlier is something that we see. As I mentioned, we have completed 15 cases from congresses and events, and most of them are available on our website. So feel free to go there and read them. We have both videos and we have also written case studies. So hopefully there will be something for everyone. And then I'll just mention that we've also been included in different strategies, and the most important one is, of course, Copenhagen's brand new and really bold strategy, which is called All Inclusive. And we also think that we have had a positive influence on the global legacy movement. So that's just to mention a few. Here I have two examples from some of the congresses that we've worked with. I think that I will only discuss the Van IFRA Congress, which is the World News Media Congress, which was hosted here in Copenhagen back in May, so not that long ago. And from our dialogue with the International Association and some of the national stakeholders, we could really hear that it is a big problem to the news industry to actually get young people to read the news. And what's really fascinating about this problem is that it's also a democratic problem. So it's a problem that is huge for the industry because young people is 1/3 of the population. And it's also really a democratic problem because if we don't read the news, then it becomes really difficult to engage in elections and the political discussions. So we think that this was a really, really a great problem to contribute to. And this is also something that World Economic they see, because over the next 2 years they rank misinformation and disinformation as the most severe risk. So how could we use the Congress as a platform to contribute positively to solving this problem? Of course, that's not a problem that we could just solve from this Congress, but maybe we could just do a little bit. And we decided that we wanted to invite news editors that were going to the Congress to be part of a workshop together with 70 international students that are at a folk school here in Copenhagen. So the day before the Congress, we hosted a full-day workshop where the news editors and journalists that were going to visit the Congress, they were part of this workshop where they could meet the students and co-define news values, so values that we could give to the news industry and say, hey, this is how you should make more engaging news to the new generation. And what we did is that we had 3 students come and present their findings and also the Copenhagen criteria. So the criteria during the Congress at a session around news avoidance. So we changed the format a little bit, and then we invited the students to come and give their perspective. And it was such a great session because there was like a new energy from having the students inside the Congress. And it was just really nice to see how they could interact, the children and the news editors, because both got something from these conversations. So it was like a really beneficial two-way communication that you will not necessarily see during a Congress. And since it was only in May, but we have a few results that I can share with you, but we reached more than 250 editors and journalists at the Van IFRA Congress, and we've also reached more than 30,000 members via emails afterwards. And that's actually pretty influential people that we have reached with the Copenhagen criteria. And 2 weeks ago, we heard from an ambassador in South Africa that they are actually using the Copenhagen criteria to produce more engaging news that is relevant for Gen Z. So that's absolutely great to get this kind of information afterwards. And the Copenhagen criteria has also been integrated into the CMS of a EU project that's called News Arcade, and that's a project that is trying to make the news gameable, so that maybe the new generation, they could instead of reading the news, they could game the news. So it's nice to be part of the software system there. And lastly, I'll just mention that that is also used as school material. So there's a few journalistic schools that are using the Copenhagen criteria to educate future journalists. So a little bit of value creation locally and nationally and also internationally, and that's what we think is successful. And the last point I will mention is that that we have also left something inside the international associations, because hopefully they will keep working on this project going forward when they go to Krakow next year. So that's also something that we think is really great, that if we can influence the conferences when they come to Copenhagen, and when they leave, they do something different, or they continue some of the projects that we have started together with them. And then just a few challenges and learnings. And I think that Ulrika, you also mentioned some of them. Do not make it more complex than is necessary. And then maybe one of the things that I will highlight is to connect with the existing initiatives. So as an example, if we do this huge project on news avoidance, then we should make sure that we're not doing this in isolation. So see if there are other strategies or stakeholders that is working with this problem. Maybe we should invite them to be part of this project. And then also think broader than just the usual suspects. So back in the days, it was most often the same life science stakeholders that we invited to be part of these conversations. And now we try to also reach out to some of the stakeholders that we haven't worked with before. And that's just a whole new perspective that they can give to working with legacy. And an example could be the folk school. Then we are also investigating if we could use artificial intelligence, so AI, to identify who we could involve in these legacy projects that we are running. Communication is not easy. So that's something that we should be even better at, to communicate what is the potential of working with legacy. And then there is a few things that makes it sometimes it's great that we use the same model for working with congresses and events, but there is differences between working with congresses and events, and that's something that we have to be clear about. And then lastly, be open and go where the energy is, because even the best ideas, if the energy is not there, it doesn't matter. So it's not always like the best idea that is the right one to choose, because if there is like the energy in the room, if that's really to do a different project and that's also making a positive impact, then maybe you should go with that one. And that was a really quick discussion from my side about legacy and how we're working here in Copenhagen. But as mentioned, most of the material is available on our website, and feel free to reach out if there is anything.
Fantastic. Great presentation. Thank you, Jakob. It's very nice to hear the content that I've heard before delivered differently, because you bring a different passion with it, and you're obviously working with it very hands-on. So we're hearing in your voice that the voice of experience. Jack, you've got a question. Go right ahead.
Yeah, just first of all, thank you so much to both presenters so far for sharing. It's amazing to hear and to get a better understanding. My question is about the after the event measurement phase, Jakob. maybe even if you want to give it in one of the examples or whatever, how long do you continue to measure for is my first question. How long after the event? And in the example of your news or whatever, what are your key measurements that you're looking at on that, and how are you making sure that you get all that data? I feel like whatever we do, we're always missing key parts of data. So can I just get a bit more information on that?
So that's from case to case, because sometimes if it's a talent, as an example, then we could it could make sense to what is the exact value of a new talent. And if it's example with the World News Media Congress, then it's really difficult to see what is the exact value of it. So it's very much depending on from case to case, but we try to discuss and decide before the initiative or the activity how we would like to measure success and how we're going to evaluate on the initiative. But it's very much case to case based. But of course, there's a few KPIs that we can look at. An example could be what is the value of a concrete talent from a certain industry. But I think if you try to put like the same measurement framework on all cases, then you will not be able to do it in a concrete way, because with the World News Media Congress, we didn't foresee that it would be used as school material, as an example. So that's just something we have to be a little bit open, that sometimes it can also go in a direction that you didn't foresee. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't create a value as school material.
How long do you continue to measure after the event?
Sorry, that was also the question. So that will be a maximum of 2 years, because otherwise we will have too many cases that we cannot keep track on. So after 2 years, we tend to say a friendly goodbye, and hopefully we will see you again in the future.
Thank you so much.
Other questions for Jakob? You introduce yourself as Jacob. Do I say Jakob? Is it Jacob or is it Jakob, or what is it?
And that's up to you. In Denmark, it will be Jakob, but
okay, all right. So I wasn't completely off the mark.
No, that's absolutely okay.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. We will then welcome our new guest, Milo. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for, I know you were a wanted man this morning and had some competing priorities. So we're very thrilled that you are joining us. So Flanders is a regional program and Flanders has been working on this for probably close to 4.5, 5 years as well. They came out with kind of their first structured process in 2021. We've then worked with them in the last 3 years to develop a comprehensive structured methodology, which was very recently publicly launched at the Impact Day. Milo, you missed it, but we talked about the Impact Day earlier in the webinar. So the Flanders Convention Bureau methodology is kind of a step-by-step methodology that helps support clients through a structured process in defining, implementing, measuring, and communicating the positive societal impacts. It is linked to their key domains and their key priorities at the Flemish government level. It has dedicated resources as part of the team. And Flanders also has had a key leadership role on the global scene as they initiated the International Alliance for Impact, which is kind of a peer-to-peer group amongst destinations working on impact at kind of all levels. So I will stop sharing and let you share your own slides, Milo, if you're ready for it. Otherwise, I can share on my side and let you control whatever you prefer. Good. welcome.
All right, this works?
It does.
Yes, it's perfect.
Great.
Remind you that you've got about 10 minutes.
I'll do my best. So what I've prepared is really a very brief overview of how we've gotten from our very first meeting in December 2021 to where we are today, and what were the first results and challenges that we've encountered. So as Genevieve mentioned, we had been thinking about it since just before COVID. We had actually developed the first idea on what legacy of conferences could be, but we really started a journey in December 21. Starting from our Vision 2050, as you had mentioned, where we sort of vision of Visit Flanders as a whole is travel to tomorrow, where we look at benefits between the visitor and the residents in the destination. So we wanted not to have more conferences, but better conferences. So we started a whole journey with Meet for Impact with several workshops, leading us to a series of pilot projects. While we were developing the methodology, we selected 5 different projects that we would actually test on straight away. So, and they basically started already in September 22, leading up all the way to somewhere mid-23. Towards the end of 22, we launched indeed, as you had mentioned, Genevieve, the International Alliance to start sharing knowledge and experiences with other destinations. Next to that, we didn't want to wait to start communicating around impact, and we started a communication campaign with what we call our legacy makers. So a series of ambassadors that started sharing their stories on what their legacy would be with business events. We built a booth to be present at different conferences. We had a workshop at an international conference taking place in Antwerp to kind of test a little bit the methodology as well with a larger audience of a conference. And then we continued the work. Again, you see a picture of our Legacy Makers event where we kind of did a first launch, but also started a new campaign around milestones and making it more personal to the legacy makers on what it is that your personal milestone would be. We actually added a 6th pilot project, which was the EACD Plus Impact Program, which was by far let's say the pilot project where we did all the different steps of a methodology with success. And then, as you had mentioned, Genevieve, we launched a methodology on the 14th of October at the Impact Day. So very brief, what is our program? Well, first of all, for us, a conference with impact is really looking at what is it, how is that different from a regular conference? I mean, a regular conference does want to have new, how would I say, breakthrough in research or networking so that research networks work better together. But when we look at an impactful conference, we see that it has a positive effect in the destination and on the at a societal level. So we take that a little step further. So as an example, this is one we use often around cycling. It's not about just a cycling conference taking place in the destination, but it's how we use that to make cycling more being used by citizens and have that as, for instance, a transportation in the city, and different, as you see here, elements that impact could create for cycling. So our methodology is basically set up in 4 different phases. We start by defining together with a group of local stakeholders what that impact could be, what kind of activities we want to organize, and what they lead to, not just as a result of the activity, but also the change they basically will generate. We support them in managing the whole process and executing the activities, mainly focusing on measurement of the results, of the direct outputs, the direct results of each activity, but also the change that it'll be delivering into the destination, but also on communicating how that impact is being generated and why we're doing the whole program. We've seen that typically this whole track from beginning to end, from the initial defining until the impact report after the conference, takes roughly between 1 to 3 years, depending on how deep we support them. So we've developed a series of tools. That's the resources we currently have available. We have a handbook available to guide the whole team through the process. The local organizing committee and impact task force. We are actually building a train-the-trainer program as we speak, so that we can have more facilitators to kind of guide this whole process. We're developing a manual for the participants so that those in the Impact Task Force also really understand the terminology and have knowledge about what an impact program could look like. We actually are bringing this into an online learning tool in Pluvo, so that people actually have a whole track where they have not only the documents of the track itself, but also the learning around it. We have also encountered a couple of challenges, and it all starts by explaining why we should be doing this. If we skip this, you never get the stakeholders on board, you never get the Impact Task Force on board. And once you have them on board with the why, it's really crucial to check the commitment that they can dedicate to such a track. That can vary. I mean, the group of stakeholders we've seen can be totally different at the end of a track than at the beginning, as long as the group is large enough and they can commit time throughout the 2 years. That's really essential. Alignment, of course, of the stakeholders, and making sure that you have stakeholders on board that can think beyond their own priorities and own strategy, but really on the, look at the bigger picture. It's mentioned again, engagement of the stakeholders. It's really, we've had a few conferences where we had 2 or 3 people leading the track and being part of the Impact Task Force. It simply doesn't work. Once you hit the 3 to 6 months before a conference, they get soaked into the operations and they forget about the impact. So it's really a dedicated team is essential. You need some expertise to grow. I mean, when we look at the first pilot project and where we landed with the last one, we couldn't have done the last one without having had the 4 or 5 other ones before, because we learned a lot on what to do and what not to do. And what we've also learned is that we were very lucky with the last project that there was lots of volunteers involved, but financing such a track and making sure that the PCO is on board and that people can dedicate time to really do it is of essence to build it and make it sustainable, let's say. So this is a few of the first results. So as I had mentioned, we've had a few conferences where we did a whole track. We even had an event on braking in Leuven. The handbook, the playbook already, our communication campaign is up and running. We're actually starting early next year the whole train-the-trainer program, trying to expand the group of facilitators for such tracks. I had not mentioned it before, but we have, in the course of those 2 years, we trained 4 people in our team to be able to lead such tracks, which is of course limiting ourselves because we're obviously not spending full time on legacy projects. And so we want to expand that group so we can have a bigger traction with it. And of course, a strong focus is going to be, as of next year, the year after, to build those local ecosystems and really work with them on how we can use conferences to create impact for them. And then one last result I can definitely share is that with the last pilot project, the EACD Plus Impact Programme, we won the Incredible Impacts Award just this year. So that was really the crown of our work of the last 2.5 years. That's it. I don't know if I'm within time. I hope so.
You are spot on. Well done. You've even got 30 seconds to spare, which we can turn into questions. I was absolutely thrilled to see that Milo's client, Elegas Mombalu from EACD, won the Incredible Impacts Award for EACD Plus. It's exciting because what a number of you shared is the challenge to onboard associations and get them to come behind these projects and understand how it's not something that is separate and stands aside their Congress. It's actually enhancing the impact of their Congress. And people like Vergucht and EACD have really understood that it needs to be embedded in the Congress going forward. It becomes part of the association's mission and how they deliver on that. And, you know, we're seeing now that's being picked up by Heidelberg and by Galway in 2026. So massive wins and congratulations. But I think the biggest win is to see the associations really taking it on and wanting to carry it forward. And for me, that's a true legacy, not just to the destination, but, you know, to the association and their community. So questions for Milo? Willie.
Yes, Milo, thank you so much. Thank all the speakers for great presentations. I was just wondering, how and where do you find your stakeholders and how do you engage them and keep them engaged?
Very good question. Well, it's one of our, as I mentioned, it's one of the criteria for us to start such work. So first of all, what we've seen is that we need a champion. Genevieve, you mentioned Vergucht. He was the local champion, and he was the one saying, we're going to do this, we're going to keep going. So whenever some stakeholders or members in the team started having difficulties, he was the one still motivating them and taking them forward. And then how to select them at the beginning. Well, we always insist in having the impact task force, that there's 4 different groups of stakeholders in there. One is academics. Second is government officials or policymakers. A third one are the entrepreneurs, the corporate world. And the fourth one is the end beneficiaries, the people within the destination. And it all starts with, we actually did a first kickoff meeting with some representation from those 4 groups of people. And with them, we kind of started looking into who do we need, first of all, in the impact task force to define the impact intention. So that's a first group. And a second group was to see who can help deliver on the different activities we've actually defined. There is overlap because some people who are in the designing stage and the defining stage will automatically raise hands and say, okay, we'll take on this activity, we'll do this, etc. But it does grow a bit larger. And it's really by keeping the focus on the long-term impact intention and why we're doing it, and seeing that there's a group of active stakeholders that are being, I wouldn't say monitored, but there's regular meetings in the process of showing this is what we're doing, we've got these results. So it's really keeping them engaged as you move forward and when you start organizing the activities. So I hope that answers your questions a little bit. It does start with motivated people, and you can motivate them as long as you keep that long-term impact intention beyond the conference. But we were very lucky. We've had pilot projects whereby the local organizing committee, I mean, the impact task force said like, oh, no, but we can't bring in the end beneficiaries. We can't bring in representatives from the patients, and we cannot bring in the entrepreneurs, but because they're corporate and we're government, that doesn't work together. And it didn't result in a really impactful manner. So if you really have those 4 groups together, that's when you can have real change, because otherwise it's going to be limited to either policy influence or academic influence, and that's all fine. That's also positive. We still see it as impact, but not the broad societal impact as we've defined it in our programs.
It's really about shared vision and the understanding that there is shared value. It's about going from individual or organizational impact to collective impact, and having these stakeholders co-create the vision as early as the very first meetings of the impact task force, as Milo mentions, having the people who will benefit from the impact created being part of defining the vision for the project and really holding that vision and making sure that it is understood as being a collective project. And we see a truly a truly successful impact project when the community fully takes ownership of the projects being created. And at some point, it almost even gets away from the destination or the client in a way that the community self-organizes, or at least is a key driver of the outputs and the outcomes that are being created. Another question for Milo before we move on to wrapping up the session?
Milo, hi. Annie from Toronto. Thank you for that.
Hi, Annie.
Follow up on Willie's question. So when you pull together these teams, is there a different task force for each congress or convention that you're pulling into the legacy program, or is it like you have a general pool of people and you create these sort of subcommittees from that general pool for each one?
You mean as in actual people who are in it, or in types of people? No, actual people.
The
So
actual people, yeah.
It's always related to the topic of the conference and of the event. So in the case of childhood onset disability, we had therapists in the group. We had corporations who develop tools and support for people with disabilities. We were lucky to have to see that EACD already had a family and users forum, and also lucky that 2 members of that family and users forum, so the end beneficiaries, were based in Belgium, and they were happy to come on board. We obviously had academics and doctors and physicians. We actually had people from the city of Bruges also joining, but it's always going to be linked to the topic of the conference. So from our side, of course, it's going to be a similar team supporting that. But from their end, it's always going to be from their community, from their world, that we try to find, and we'll guide them in selecting the right people, those we need on board and those we ideally would have in the team. But ultimately, it's going to be them who can motivate the team, the people around them. And it's really when you have that first basic team, they'll start thinking, oh, but we could invite him and we could invite her. And then, so that's how the whole dynamics go. And it's not just a task at the beginning, just to select a group of stakeholders. It's something that is ongoing throughout the project. You keep losing people, not losing in the sense that, you know, it's just that some will get less interested, or will just say like, this is really good, this is really interesting, keep going, but I have really little added value. And contact me again at the end when you need some support for communications, and vice versa. Other people will come in halfway and say, I'll just help with organizing the sports festival, or I just help organize with this activity. So it's a very dynamic process with the stakeholders.
If I can add from our experience, both with Flanders, but in the other pilot projects that we have co-managed with our destination partners, that's where there's 2 levels of stakeholder groups. There's a core group that's really the project lead group that stays throughout. And the impact task force is a bit of a movable force, as Milo says, because there are some stakeholders that are much better at setting in vision in the beginning, but they may not be the ones that are actually going to implement the activities. Maybe they will designate someone else in their team. So the 4 steps that Milo talked about, the definition stage is really where you're going to have the vision setters. And then the implementation stage is potentially where you're going to need more doers that are going to take on specific activities and specific initiatives. When we get to the measurement stage, then you may need to bring in the research people or the data people from these organizations to support. And then when you get to the communication stage, then you may pull in the communication directors or managers of the different organizations, or someone who's got more affinities. So throughout the project, you need different skills, and therefore you may need different stakeholders to be involved. But it's important to have a core group that will keep piloting the project throughout. Fantastic. Ulrika, Jakob, Milo, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I've actually made a little AI of myself, and I've been taking notes. So literally, it's on the spot. I've been making notes about what I notice are the common themes to the 3 finalists. I've got to stop because I'm now at 13, but hopefully our real AI will pick this up and potentially create maybe a little bullet point of best practices for you guys. So here I go, trying to be the best AI part of myself. So what I noticed, these 3 finalists, and that also applied for business events Sydney last year. A, it is part of the core business strategy of the Bureau. It's not something they've parked in a corner office. It is part of what they do. It is part of their overall approach, and it is part now of their DNA. 2, they have all sought government support, either at the city or at the regional level, and they have embedded their program in and aligned them with local and national priorities in a very explicit fashion. 3, there's a strong alignment with sustainability. All 3 of these destinations are also very strong on sustainability, and they've actually gone beyond. They have a regenerative approach, and the impact projects in their events is part of how they regenerate and create new shared value for their destination. 4, they have all dedicated resources, both human resources and financial and technical resources. There's a governance for the program that has been developed, and they train their resources. 5, they all have an approach where they create a true partnership with their association clients that is centered on the mission of the client first and foremost, and that drives the impact intention. 6, all 3 of them use the theory of change as a framework to identify the impact intentions and the outcomes that they are wanting to achieve, some portion of the theory of change. 7, they all have a structured framework, which is also flexible based on the client's level of interest and ability to implement. And those structured frameworks have 3 main components. 1 is about their organization. So how does the Bureau organize itself and manages the project? B, how do they engage the external ecosystem? And 3, how do they engage clients? Number 8, they have a shared methodology with slight changes for congresses and events. All 3 of them have tried the methodology on sports events successfully, and will continue to do so. So it's a testament that a same core methodology can be applied across different types of events. 9, you've all engaged a wider group of stakeholders than those traditionally centered around a Congress. You've involved people from the community, and you're involving the end beneficiary. 10, I see an iterative approach from all 3 of you, meaning you're willing to learn and you're willing to evolve your model. It is not fixed in time. There's learnings for you as a destination, and there's learnings for your event clients. 11, all 3 of you are playing a leadership role on the international scene. You are showcasing what you're doing. You're creating case studies, and you're creating shared value for the whole industry, not just for yourselves. 12, you're tracking and measuring the impact of your initiatives, and you're committed to becoming better at it. And 13, all of you have a passion to create change, and that has led from within this movement to create this from with your destination, but we hear it in your voice. So these, you're committed champions, and you've literally contaminated positively your colleagues. I don't know if I've forgotten any, but that was kind of what came out to me. I was scribbling away as I was listening to you guys. So I think those of you that are aspiring to have a really powerful impact program next year, you now have a roadmap. A few things, what's next? So what is coming up for GDS, Index, and Meet for Impact as we continue in our mission to support the industry to create and measure and share more impact? The Impact Strategy and Measurement Masterclass is still available to destinations who wish to participate in it. Willie is our latest student with Amsterdam. My colleague and I were in Amsterdam in September and delivered the masterclass to not only the Convention Bureau, but people from the DMO, people from the city, people from the venues. So it was a fantastic group. We were just a little over 25, I think. So the masterclass is a structured course. It is the equivalent of about 10 contact hours with some engagement on your part, some homework, and some learning from a learning management platform. So do get involved with and do contact either Julia, myself, or anyone from the GDS team about this if you think this may be the next step for your destination. We encourage you to read the impact report that we've created, Made for Impact, this year. It was our first impact report. It was a lot of work. We had a lot of learnings. You can scan this little QR code, or you can go on our website. And we are giving you some examples of what's happened for the people who have done the masterclass. So we've got some impact KPIs on how it has moved the needle on their understanding of impact, the creation of impact programs or impact resourcing. It's a good read. We have our theory of change. It's not perfect. I'm sure we'll evolve it over the next few years, but it was our way of saying we're going to practice what we preach. So we've developed our theory of change on how we're supporting the ecosystem to create more impact. I see there are some chats. Julia, I take it that you are all on top of it.
Yes.
We created, so Guy Bigwood and I had a session at ICA on subvention funding. We also had that same session, or kind of similar session at the Impact Day. We're really wanting to push the industry in understanding that none of this is going to happen magically. And until we access additional funding, it's not going to happen at all. So we want to catalyze a conversation with industry actors on how do we actually, or how are we going to actually scale this? And you know, really reach out to the rest of the world that is funding impact projects to say, we'd like to be part of that. And how does that happen? We've partnered with Conferly to do a research, which will be launched next week at IBTM. You will receive, all of you, an email. And Julia, if you want to make sure that we are doing that, when we do have a survey that is up, we will send you the survey. Please fill it out. We're trying to benchmark the practices of the industry on subvention. And more importantly, we're trying to understand how you are leveraging subventions to create change with the events that you are hosting. Brand new, very few of you are aware of this. We first launched it at ICA. So Made for Impact is partnering with GevMe, who is the Singapore-based technology company behind Spark and Snapsight, who are two AI platforms for the industry. We are developing an AI-powered platform for impact measurement to support everything you've been talking about. So from the initial strategy, planning with the client, all the way to report creation, impact visualization, communication of impact, creation of case studies. We're also exploring how we could potentially embed your subvention fund tracking in that. Jakob, you were talking about the legacy document that came out of the news media conference. We want to explore how we could track outcomes of legacy documents and pledges. We are looking for a small core group of destinations and associations who are willing to invest to become innovators and co-designers of this. It's going to be a user-centered user design platform being built all through 25. Please write to me if you'd like any more information, or find me at ICA, and we will actually give you a presentation of the tool. And finally, we have one more webinar on the GDS Awards happening in December. So the 4th of December at 5:30 European time, we will be doing a similar thing that we did today with the Innovation Award finalist.